The commandment that we're opening up together this morning is do not bear false witness against your neighbor. And our supplemental reading is a story in which a biblical hero does just that. He lies. In many ways, this story will feel familiar, not because you've read it before, though you may have. It will feel familiar because we know it. It's the story of two siblings who are fighting over their parents' affection and money. Jacob and Esau are twins. Esau arrives first, and Jacob is coming right after him, grabbing at his heel. And this begins a lifetime of fierce competition. Jacob, who's smaller, is his mother Rebekah's favorite. Esau is big and hairy and good at hunting, and he's his father's favorite. The story begins at the end of their father Isaac's life. He's blind, weak, and ready to bestow a ritual blessing upon his firstborn son, Esau. He's a wealthy man with land and livestock and servants and slaves. The ritual blessing, in essence, enacts his will. It bestows all his wealth upon the son who receives it. Rebekah overhears her husband giving the ritual's instructions to Esau. So while Esau goes out to hunt and cook a meal as per his father's instructions, Rebekah helps Jacob do so more quickly. She covers him in goat hair to disguise his smooth skin. We enter the story as Jacob sits down to receive the blessing meant for his brother. As you listen to the story, note the lies.
The readings are from Exodus and Genesis. From Exodus, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. And from Genesis, so he went in to his father and said, "My father." And he said, "Here I am. Who are you, my son?" Jacob said to his father, "I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Now sit up and eat of my game, so that you may bless me." But Isaac said to his son, "How is it that you have found it so quickly, my son?" He answered, "Because the Lord your God granted me success." Then Isaac said to Jacob, "Come near that I may feel you, my son, to know whether you are really my son Esau or not." So Jacob went up to his father Isaac, who felt him and said, "The voice is Jacob's voice, but his hands are the hands of Esau." He did not recognize him, but his hands were hairy like his brother Esau's hands, so he blessed him. He said, "Are you really my son Esau?" He answered, "I am." Then he said, "Bring it to me, that I may eat of my son's game and bless you." So he brought it to him, and he ate, and he brought him wine, and he drank. Then his father Isaac said to him, "Come near and kiss me, my son." So he came near and kissed him, and he smelled the smell of his garments and blessed him. And he said, "Ah, the smell of my son is like the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed." Now Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing with which his father had blessed him. And Esau said to himself, "The days of mourning for my father are approaching. Then I will kill my brother Jacob." But the words of her elder son Esau were told to Rebekah. So she sent and called her younger son Jacob and said to him, "Your brother Esau is consoling himself by planning to kill you. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice. Flee at once to my brother Laban in Haran, and stay with him for a while until your brother's fury turns away." Hear what the Spirit is saying to the church. Amen.
I grew up in a little bungalow with 3 bedrooms and 1 bathroom, and that bathroom sometimes seemed like a catch-all drawer. Oh, you could find the usual things in there, like books and magazines, like soap and makeup, but you could also find in there catalogs and bills. Ties or suit jackets might be hung on the door. My Barbies were often in there. The cats who hated water would lose toys in there somehow. Yes, the room was both a catch-all drawer and a black hole. All kinds of things got lost in there. So when I found 3 quarters on the counter, shortly after receiving a brand new piggy bank, I thought no one would notice if I took these quarters and put them in my piggy bank. Let's be clear. I may have only been 5 years old, but I was not stupid. I knew these quarters weren't mine. I knew I probably shouldn't be taking them, but I was sure that no one would notice. My mother noticed. "Alex," she said, "do you know what happened to the quarters your father left on the bathroom counter?" "I have no idea." Maybe I wasn't so smart. A smarter child might have realized that the only other possible quarter snatcher was my toddler sister, who couldn't even see the top of the counter. After giving the bathroom another look through, my mother found me in my bedroom. "I think you have those quarters." And that was all it took. I was in tears. I ran to my piggy bank. I turned it over and shook it. I told her she could have the quarters back. I would never do it again. She took the piggy bank from me and set it back on the dresser. Then she gestured for me to sit beside her on the bed. And she told me something I will never forget. "I'm not mad that you took the quarters. I'm mad that you lied about it." You can break someone's trust by telling one lie, and then you may have to tell years of truths to earn that trust back. That day, I learned that trust is fragile, and lies break it. Jacob lost his brother's trust, made him angry enough to want to murder him. Jacob had to run away for years and years. By the time Jacob finally gathered up enough courage to return home to his family, he and his brother had acquired hundreds of servants and small armies to protect their livestock and their wives and children. When Esau heard about Jacob's return, he gathered up his army to come and meet Jacob. The lie and its repercussions had led to this: twin brothers on the brink of war. Okay, this seems like an extreme example. Extreme in the heinous nature of the lie, and extreme in the depth of the hatred it evoked in his brother. But certainly, this is what lies can do. Our communities, our families, our churches, our cities, our nation, these are all built on a foundation of trust. Do not bear false witness against your neighbor. This commandment aims to protect that foundation of trust. Like the commandments preceding it and following it, it aims to help us live in community with one another. Families need to trust each other. As we saw in the story of Jacob and Esau in ancient Israel, family rituals had far-reaching economic consequences, and these rituals assumed a level of trust between the participants. One lie could destroy that trust. One lie could destroy a family. And this is still true. While we don't live in a culture where first sons pass on their wealth to first sons in a ritual blessing, people do will their wealth to their children and loved ones. And we are still witnessing the squabbling, the deceit people put each other through in order to get their fair share. We are still watching mistrust eat away at families. And that's because everything is built upon trust. We trust that our parents will be there to pick us up from practice on time. We trust that our children won't steal the 3/4 we've left on our bathroom counter. We trust that our partner will remember to do the favor, the one that they forgot before but promised to do next time. Even in the everyday little stuff, trust is pretty important. And this commandment covers a wider scope than the everyday and a wider community than our families. It also protects the trust upon which our institutions, particularly our civic institutions, are based. Do not bear false witness against your neighbor. The Hebrew for bear false witness might be better translated as testify false witness. Testify, witness. These are legal words we would generally hear in a courtroom or perhaps on Law and Order. They held the same legal connotations in ancient Israel. While the 10 Commandments, as we have noted Sunday after Sunday, are not meant to be a set of laws for the community, but guidelines for living, these commandments are set within the law, books and books of law. Laws about the type of fabric you can wear. Laws about the type of food you can eat and when you can eat it. Laws about what happens when someone steals your livestock in the daytime. Laws about what happens when someone steals your livestock in the nighttime. The 10 Commandments might not themselves be laws, but the ancient Israelites certainly had laws. And their community, much like our own, functioned on the assumption, on the trust that people would follow the laws. But they knew about humanness, like we do today. They knew that people do not always follow the laws. So they had a justice system to deal with people who broke the law. It may not seem that just to us now, but the elders of the community, usually wealthy landowners, people who had people to tend their farms, would gather at the city gates to deliberate over the problems that people would bring them. And the basis of the justice system, both theirs and ours, is trust. We have to trust that those petitioning the system are honest, that they're not forging evidence. We have to trust that people will tell the truth on the witness stand. In our country, perjury, lying in court, is a federal crime. One little lie told to a judge or a jury can put a person in prison. And the harshness of this punishment matches the weight of the crime. Our system depends on people telling the truth. It depends on judges and jury members being able to trust evidence and witnesses. Mistrust disrupts justice. For democracy to function, we must not only have trust in our justice system, we must also trust our elected leaders. We must trust that these leaders are being honest in telling us that they have our interests at heart when creating laws and taking executive actions. Deceptive governments and mistrusting populaces make for sick democracies. They make for revolutions like we saw in the Arab Spring. Even in our own system, we can easily see the symptoms of a sometimes deceitful government and an occasionally mistrustful electorate. I was a political science major in college, and I'll admit I'm still a little bit of an election junkie. When the real race for the White House got underway this summer, I was eating up the coverage of it. At the time, I was working closely with a young man who had just turned 20. This would be the first presidential election he would have the opportunity to vote in. I was geeked on his behalf. When I asked him the obviously rhetorical question, "Aren't you so pumped to be able to vote for the next president of the United States of America?" he said this: Alex, I hate to tell you, but I don't believe in politics. I'm not gonna vote. When both candidates lie all the time, there is no way for me to make a truly informed choice. Now, while I may disagree with the content of his statement, I think we can all agree that he is far from alone in his disillusionment, a disillusionment at least partly based on mistrust. Deceitful propaganda, outright lies, unreliable follow-through on promises made on the campaign trail, these are deeply disheartening for our entire national community. Lying is pervasive in our system, and so is the mistrust that follows from it. And trust is much easier to lose than it is to gain back. So where does that leave us? I mean, everybody lies sometimes, right? Well, maybe not everybody, but most of us, myself included, sometimes tell small, harmless lies. Of course I noticed your haircut. I just didn't want you to feel self-conscious. Oh, yum, this tastes delicious. No, officer, I had no idea the speed limit was only 35. Lies don't seem like they're a problem until we get caught. Sometimes they may even seem to make certain situations better. In situations where truth has the potential to hurt our friends and neighbors, honesty can seem downright cruel. Is it okay to lie? I don't know. It feels really complicated to me. Many of us lie. Most of us expect to be lied to, and the world usually keeps on going. Lying is so normalized within our society that this commandment can seem a confounding moral paradox. But for these very same reasons that so many of us lie and expect to be lied to, for me, this commandment seems incredibly convicting. The Bible doesn't offer us any easy answers. It offers us this commandment: do not bear false witness against your neighbor. For the health of your family and your community, do not lie. But it also offers us this story. Esau, the wronged brother from our Bible story, who at one point had been angry enough to kill his brother Jacob, sees Jacob approaching after years of being away. Remember, Esau has brought an army of men with him to meet Jacob. And yet, he does not signal for this army to strike Jacob down. Scripture says, Esau ran to meet Jacob and embraced him. He threw his arms around his neck and kissed him, and they wept. Amen.